The rain poured relentlessly that night, pounding against the windows of the small, crumbling house like 1,000 tiny hammers. Inside, under the dim glow of a flickering bulb, Daniel Reed sat hunched over the kitchen table, a stack of unpaid bills scattered before him. The numbers swam in his tired eyes: electricity overdue, rent past due, groceries running thin. Across the room, his 6-year-old daughter, Lily, was fast asleep on the worn-out couch, her tiny hands clutching her teddy bear. Her chest rose and fell softly, and Daniel found himself staring at her. His reason, his fight, his everything. He brushed a hand across his face, rough with exhaustion. Life hadn't been kind to him since his wife Emily passed away 3 years ago. Cancer had taken her quickly, mercilessly, leaving him drowning in grief and responsibility. Every day since had been a battle, a quiet war between hope and despair. And just when he thought the night couldn't get any heavier, the phone rang. It was an unfamiliar number. For a moment, he thought of ignoring it. But something in the silence between the raindrops made him reach for it. "Mr. Reed," a soft, refined voice asked on the other end. "Yes, who's this?" he said cautiously. I believe you're my neighbor," she replied. "I live next door. I was wondering if you might spare a few minutes tomorrow morning." Her tone was polite, almost distant, but beneath it lingered something else. Curiosity perhaps, or maybe loneliness. Daniel frowned. The mansion next door had been empty for as long as he could remember. It loomed over his modest house like a sleeping giant, its grand gates rusted shut, its windows always dark. "You live next door?" he repeated, unsure. "Yes," the woman said, her voice trembling slightly. "My name is Evelyn Hart." And before he could ask more, the line went dead. "If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet power of compassion, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your support helps us bring more heartfelt stories to life." The next morning, Daniel stood outside his small wooden gate, watching the mist drift across the street. The mansion that had always seemed lifeless now looked different. The gate was open, the gravel driveway, freshly cleared. The scent of roses lingered faintly in the air. He hesitated, feeling out of place in his faded jacket and scuffed boots, but curiosity tugged at him. He walked up the driveway, heart pounding. When the massive front door opened, he found himself face to face with a woman who looked as though she'd stepped out of another world. Evelyn Hart was in her late 30s, her posture graceful, her eyes a stormy gray that hinted at both strength and sadness. She invited him in with a polite smile, and Daniel instantly noticed how empty the grand house felt. Marble floors gleamed under crystal chandeliers, but there was no warmth. It was beautiful, yes, but hollow. Evelyn explained that she had recently moved back after years away. The mansion had belonged to her late parents, both gone now. "I've been alone for a long time," she confessed softly, her eyes drifting to the garden beyond the glass doors. "I heard your daughter playing outside last week. Her laughter, it reminded me of something I'd forgotten." Daniel listened, unsure where this was leading. Evelyn went on to explain that she'd seen the state of his home and the broken fence between their yards. "I wanted to offer some help," she said. "Please don't take offense. I just thought maybe I could do something kind." Pride flared in Daniel's chest. He'd always done everything he could for Lily without asking for help. But the sincerity in Evelyn's tone disarmed him. She wasn't pitying him. She was reaching out in her own quiet way. He thanked her, politely, declined, and walked home. But that night, he couldn't stop thinking about her. There was something haunting about her eyes, something that mirrored his own loneliness. Days turned into weeks, and the two began to cross paths often. Sometimes Evelyn would wave from her garden. Other times, she'd send over small gestures, a basket of fruit, a warm loaf of bread, a handwritten note. Slowly, the barrier between their worlds began to fade. One afternoon, as Daniel worked on fixing his fence, Lily ran over to the mansion's garden to chase butterflies. Evelyn watched from her porch, smiling for the first time in what seemed like years. Daniel noticed that smile and felt a strange warmth bloom inside him. Over time, their conversations deepened. Evelyn told him about her past, the loneliness of growing up in a house filled with wealth but void of love, the years she spent abroad trying to escape the memories of her parents' cold perfection. Daniel shared his story, too. The loss of his wife, the sleepless nights, the fear of failing his daughter. They talked until the sun dipped low and the crickets began to sing. Two broken souls finding quiet comfort in each other's presence. But life, as always, had its cruel timing. One morning, Daniel got a notice taped to his door. The landlord had sold the property, and he had 30 days to vacate. His heart sank. He'd barely managed to keep up with rent, buying a new place was impossible. That night, as he sat with Lily asleep in his arms, he wondered what he would tell her. The idea of losing the little home they'd built, the memories they'd shared, it shattered him. A few days later, Evelyn appeared at his door. "You're leaving?" she asked, her voice trembling. He nodded, trying to smile. "We'll figure something out." She looked at him for a long time, her expression unreadable. Then she said, "Daniel, I have an idea, but you may not like it." She paused before continuing. "The guest house behind my mansion. It's been empty for years. It's small but comfortable. Stay there, just until you find your footing." Daniel wanted to refuse. Every part of him screamed against taking charity. But when he looked at Lily, her eyes wide with worry, he knew he couldn't let his pride rob her of safety. He finally agreed, promising himself it would be temporary. The move was quiet and simple. The guest house, though old, was cozy. The first night, Lily ran across the garden, laughing, chasing the fireflies that danced in the warm air. Evelyn watched from her balcony, her eyes soft, her heart strangely full. For the first time in years, the mansion didn't feel so cold. As weeks passed, something remarkable happened. Daniel began repairing things around the estate, fixing broken lights, trimming the hedges, restoring the greenhouse that had fallen into ruin. Evelyn, in turn, started cooking again, inviting him and Lily for dinners that turned into late-night conversations by the fireplace. Slowly, the mansion began to feel alive again, filled with laughter, warmth, and the comforting sounds of family life. One evening, as Daniel repaired an old piano in Evelyn's drawing room, she sat nearby watching his hands move with quiet skill. "You're good with your hands," she said softly. He chuckled. "Years of fixing things I couldn't afford to replace." Evelyn's smile faded slightly as she looked down. "You fix more than just things, Daniel. You bring life where there's been emptiness." The air between them grew still, charged with something unspoken. But happiness can be fragile. One rainy afternoon, Evelyn collapsed in her garden. Daniel found her just in time and rushed her to the hospital. The diagnosis hit like lightning: heart condition long neglected, worsened by stress and years of solitude. She needed surgery soon, but she refused at first, saying she didn't want to burden anyone. Daniel stayed by her side through every test, every sleepless night in that cold hospital corridor. "You're not alone," he told her quietly one evening. "You saved me and my daughter when we had nothing. Let me be here for you." The surgery was risky, but Evelyn agreed. Daniel and Lily waited anxiously for hours, praying, hoping, whispering every wish they could think of. When the doctor finally emerged with a tired smile and said, "She's going to be fine," Daniel broke down, tears streaming down his face for the first time in years. Months later, when Evelyn returned home, she was weaker, but smiling. She spent her recovery surrounded by the laughter of a little girl and the quiet strength of a man who refused to give up on her. In that time, something deeper than gratitude bloomed. Love, gentle, and unexpected. One golden evening, Evelyn sat with Daniel on the porch, watching Lily play under the setting sun. The mansion glowed behind them, no longer a symbol of loneliness, but of renewal. "You know," Evelyn said softly, "I used to think this house was a prison. But you and Lily, you turned it into a home." Daniel smiled, taking her hand. "Maybe we both just needed someone to remind us that broken things can be made whole again." And in that simple moment, surrounded by laughter and the soft rustle of leaves, they both realized that life had given them a second chance. Not just at happiness, but at family. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your support helps us bring more stories of hope, love, and redemption to life. Before you scroll away, tell us in the comments, do you believe that kindness from a stranger can change a life forever? As the camera pans out in your mind, you can almost see it. The small guest house glowing warmly under the stars, the grand mansion standing tall and alive again, and a single dad who finally found not just a home, but a place where his heart could rest.